Does this mean you don't keep track of domestic violence homicides?
Phone call after phone call with state and local law enforcement.
How do you know there's not a problem if you don't keep record of it?
We tried to get answers about how widespread domestic violence is in Pennsylvania.
You aren't able to say how many of these cases are domestic violence related?
To know why we're asking these questions, we bring you to the YWCA of Greater Harrisburg, because that's where this all starts.
There was a drop, a drastic drop by about 50% of people, coming to seek our services.
Services for domestic violence victims. In a typical year, a drop in victims would mean good news to President and CEO Mary Quinn. However, 2020 was anything but typical.
For a woman with children, she might not want to risk her health, the health of her children, coming into a communal space where there is this very scary, unknown pandemic that none of us have ever seen. And maybe she would rather just take her chances at home with what she knows.
What did you think? What went through your mind?
I think we knew right away. We knew victims were still out there.
Still out there and potentially unable to get help. In Lancaster County, domestic violence cases where charges were filed dropped 66% in 2020, raising real concerns about whether violence is happening in secret. District Attorney Heather Adams says she'd feel more positive if her office saw this decline in a typical year, telling us in an email, quote, "Interpreting these statistics can be difficult given the pandemic. While services were still in place, victims may not have been able to break away to make calls or leave the house as easily to seek the help they needed. My office will keep a close eye on these numbers." Numbers that are hard to find. FOX43 reveals many counties are not able to provide a clear picture of domestic violence in their communities. We filed several right-to-know requests, talked with every district attorney's office in South Central PA.
How do you keep track of these cases? There's no widespread data for that?
In many cases, the data do not exist. Agencies telling us their office does not maintain separate records for domestic violence. Our next step, reach out to state police for the big picture. But our right-to-know request was denied because even the Pennsylvania State Police does not collect clearance data specifically for domestic violence homicides. That leads us to the Departments of Criminology and Statistics at the University of Pennsylvania. Professor Richard Burke says improving data collection on domestic violence crimes has been an ongoing discussion for more than a decade.
And what are some of the consequences when you find out that the data just isn't there for specific types of crime?
Oh my, is that frustrating? Well, how do you know that you've improved the situation for victims of domestic violence? Unless you have data you don't know. How do you then improve the program? Because no program is going to be perfect. Without data, you can't. So from the very beginning, all the way through to the end, where you're trying to do what's best for everybody, without data, your hands are tied.
Without specific data on domestic violence homicides, could we potentially miss unseen patterns?
Absolutely. You don't have it, you don't know about it.
Now, organizations like the YWCA are seeing a rush of people seeking help.
We expected our numbers to escalate once things kind of returned a little bit back to normal.
And did they?
And they did.
Within the last 6 months, the YWCA filed more emergency protection from abuse orders than in all of last year. Quinn believes many cases of domestic violence are still going unreported. The only way to know the answer is by asking questions.
If you suspect something is not right with a friend, a neighbor, an employee, to ask them if they're safe at home is a huge help to them and can be really impactful and honestly can potentially save their life.
Some counties receive a U.S. Department of Justice grant called Stop Violence Against Women. It allows law enforcement agencies to have special prosecutors for domestic violence cases and more services for victims. To learn more about that and to see all of the data we were able to gather about domestic violence in South Central PA, head to our website, FOX43.com. FOX43 reveals issues that affect you and your family to keep you informed. Do you have a story you want us to investigate? Send us a confidential email at FOX43Reveals at FOX43.com.